Steelers.
Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing them for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed.
I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, 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 black and yellow.
And welcome back to the 5th episode of the Steel City Sermon. I am your host, Mr. Roy Countryman, or if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, at PreacherBoyRoy, and the show's Twitter, at Steel City Sermon. This has been a blast filming this for Steeler Nation the last few weeks. Getting to know all you guys and hoping you appreciate the work I'm pouring into here. I'm going to continue to do it, and let's just jump into it here. Our Steelers came up with a victory against the Browns in the rematch after the aftermath of what happened with Mr. Myles Garrett. We got the W coming back out of that, and we're continually making a surge to go into the playoffs, hopefully here as we sit currently in the 6th seed, and we're looking strong even though we are on our 3rd quarterback this year, and quite frankly, he's outperforming number 2, Mr. Mason Rudolph. But I really got to start off by tipping the cap to both the teams in Pittsburgh and Cleveland both. There was a lot of composure and a lot of sportsmanship going in through this game. We didn't know how it was going to turn out, being the bad blood that seemed to be boiling and percolating before. But there was no post-play jaw-jacking. There was only a 15-yard penalty on the roughing the passer call by Bud Dupree, which was terrible, if not shouldn't even warranted a penalty there. So a huge tip of the cap to the coaching staffs and all the figureheads there to keep everything in line, the captains, to making it a clean football game, and what a game it was. And we're just going to take a dive into it here in our prelude in the starting thoughts section of the video, and that's Duck Mania. It's taking over Pittsburgh. He's everywhere right now, folks. Steeler Nation, if you don't look around you, the blind might not be full. He might be right beside you hunting, as he was spied up with some kids and a fellow rookie, Zach Gentry, visiting Santa Claus. He was also courtside at a Pitt Panthers game, and even at the Penguins game, who I believe he was hanging out with Aquaman, and he was on the Jumbotron in a video there. So Duck Mania is taking over Pittsburgh. He's just kind of a cult and folk hero that's drumming up the bandwagon here, and great for him. Great for that guy that came from small Sanford, was a standout player there, and is forging his own path here. He had nothing to lose, and he's playing like it out in the field. So big tip of the cap to him. His numbers might not look the greatest, but boy, does this guy play with swagger and confidence that just can't be shaken. This past game, he was 14 of 21 for 212 yards, averaging just over 10 yards a pass, and he did have a touchdown and also an interception, which shouldn't have been an interception if the route was completed by Mr. Johnson. So, and he also scrambled a few times, 5 for just a few yards. So this guy, it's not even the yardage and what he's been doing there that's been so impressive. Like I said, it was that confidence, that swagger of knowing that I shouldn't even be here right now, but I'm starting for a playoff contender. From Sanford to Pittsburgh, we're in the playoffs right now, Steeler Nation. And this guy, he's reinvigorated us, gave us a reason to hope. For offensively wise, we see some budding relationships with some of his playmakers out wide. And there was an interesting tweet here I got to share with you guys from Andrew Siciliano, who's a great reporter. He said Devlin Duck Hodges was the first undrafted rookie quarterback to win his first 2 NFL starts since Ed Rubert for the 1987 replacement Redskins. Wow. And a little known fact, does anybody know who that quarterback was an inspiration for? That's right, it's none other than Shane Falco, the quarterback of the replacement. So this really is folklore. It could be wrote into a movie script. I know I've seen somebody, I believe it might have been my cohort over at the XFL Files and Pick 6, that said Disney's going to probably buy his rights, Duck Hodges' story, to be able to make it a Disney movie, being that his nickname's Duck, and they're gonna just let Donald Duck go with it and make it a football story. So it'll be interesting to see what's happening there. But this is just been an amazing ride to follow along with, and good for Devlin Duck Hodges to just keep putting that foot forward, putting the foot on the gas pedal, and get us into them playoffs. Because as soon as you have that opportunity, who's to say what could happen down the road? But we all know one of his biggest playmakers over the last few weeks, and who he's really showed in that relationship with, not only on the football field but hunting as well, going duck hunting with, is James Washington. His mini breakout over the last 2 games against the Bengals and Browns. He has 7 reception, 11 targets, so he's looking for him early and often. And he's going down the field. He has 209 yards. He's averaging almost just under 30 yards a catch. He's a 79-yard catch for a long, 2 touchdowns and 5 first downs. That's the makings of a number 1 receiver. I know a lot of people are down on James Washington, but this guy has all the ingredients to be a high-quality receiver. High pointing ability, strong hands, combat catchability. His concentration, as we've seen with the last touchdown this past week, with all the defenders all over the place and him still being able to come up to it, is just amazing. And it's fun to see him develop along with Duck Hodges and some of these other young guys on offense. So Duck, keep tossing the ball there and keep that chemistry building. We love to see you both. And finally, the other running back to the equation here, we have the passer and the pass catcher, and then we have the third ingredient, Benny Snell football. We're loving it, and welcome to being the featured back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to ring the bell right now. James Conner, I love you. I know you're working your way back. You've been running scout team and been limited practices throughout trying to get back from that shoulder injury, and I hope you do, if we do make the playoffs, that you can contribute in some way. But right now, Benny Snell should be the majority shareholder in the backfield. Just his ability to come downhill and have that angry mentality that I'm going to run through you, you're not going to stop me for a loss. He's been great in short yardage. His ability to pick up first downs has really been an underrated addition to this offense, especially with the unsettled quarterback position. That ability to pick up those 3rd and shorts, the 3rd and 3s or less, by running the football with him, consistently falling forward through contact, really extends drives and gives the young quarterbacks an opportunity to build that rhythm and chemistry and be able to continually those drives that are key in this time with our defense playing at such a great level. You want to see the offense still get more opportunities to get it right. And last week's game was somewhat of a head turner, being able to see the big plays downfield and the football running power, the what we could have put together a complementary running game, deep passing game. It's really exciting to see coming in the last third of the season, the last stretch here, where we got to continually win games if we're going to make the playoffs, Steeler Nation. And the 1-2 punch with him and Kareth White and even Jalen Samuels was impressive last week. He stepped up in pass protection. He's always going to be that good outlet receiver, but Kareth White, great speed, still showing that. And that combination of them 3 backs, but Benny Snell should be the one getting the lion's share of carries there. So this guy, and on top of it all, Steeler Nation, I'm a big fan. His mouth guard game is elite. We can't say there's anybody better in the NFL mouth guard wise. Maybe DK Metcalf with the baby's binky, but who can knock a guy that has a spinner rim as his mouth guard? This guy is just pure elite, and it's gold standard to me. So Benny Snell, I want to see you keep pounding that football. And the defense is always, Steeler Nation. How much we appreciate it, don't we? Whenever we have a great defense, it just feels like home. It feels like Christmas time, and seeing all your aunts and uncles again is that dominant defense. And our defense put consistent pressure on Baker Mayfield, even after him taking the hand to the helmet of Bud Dupree right before halftime. He took 5 sacks by a myriad of people. TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, as always. Cam Sutton even got a sack here. And Javon Hargrave was playing quite well down the stretch. With those 5 sacks, it put us at 43 on the year. We're 3rd in the league in that category, right behind the Panthers, who lead the league at 46, and also the 49ers at 45. And Steeler Nation, we're averaging 3.6 sacks a game. And it's kind of a weird stat because per teamrankings.com, at home we're averaging 5 sacks a game, but on the road we're averaging only a little bit over 1.5, 1.6 sacks a game. So we'll have to see if we can't even that out down the last few games in 2019 here for the Steelers, as we're going to have to take to the road and win a couple key games down the stretch. But we only need 8 more sacks to match our total from last year, which left us tied for first with the Chiefs at 52. So we're right up there, and the needed turnovers and takeaways, in addition to that pressure, it's just been an awesome defense to watch. Bud Dupree, can't say enough about you. What you did in the Cleveland game, not only did you have the helmet there in place for the hitting of Mayfield's hand, but you also caused a key third quarter strip sack and forced fumble of Mayfield that set up Chris Boswell's second field goal that helped stretch that league of ours by 10 points. So and that puts you at your career high right now at 8.5. And what a year you're having. You're becoming a vital member of this defense going forward, a true must sign coming the off season, and the type of chemistry that you can play off of TJ Watt and the ability to put pressure on both sides is a dynamic presence, and that's a must keep, even over maybe a Javon Hargrave and some other guys that you don't want to give up. But that your edge presence and your ability to step up this year has been just amazing. And keep it up, bud. And lastly, Joe Hayden, my man, what a way to put a dagger in the heart of your former team. He knows he's been missing a lot of interceptions this year, Steeler Nation. He's had a lot bounce off of one hand, or he's broken up some that maybe he should have came up with. He's even said this past week that he's been putting in the extra work and with the jugs machine after practice just to try to convert them pass defense into interceptions, as he has had 13 pass defense already this year. But it was great to see him get that game-sealing interception of the Browns after they cut him. And what an addition he's been, what a leader he's been, that secondary, and just absolutely amazing. And the final thought here in our prelude session is TJ Watt. What can we say? This guy is an elite pass rusher, one of the best in the NFL. He was just named the Defensive Player of the Month for November, and I think this is that step before you hit the top of the echelon here in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. He's had at least a partial sack in every game since week 4 and a quarterback hit in every game this season. That's 9 straight weeks that he's had at least a half sack, and that's an outstanding streak, and a beginning point to your argument for Defensive Player of the Year. And just to take a look at it here, who his competition might be, and we'll look at their stats as well. And TJ Watt, this is his. 39 tackles, 25 solo. He has 12.5 sacks, 11 tackle for loss, 28 quarterback hits, 5 forced fumbles, with 3 of them fumble recoveries, an interception, and 5 pass defense. That includes batted passes down at the line of scrimmage. And that's got to be in the top 3 in consideration when you're looking at the other competitors here. And some of the other guys that are up for it is Shaquille Barrett, who had a great season down in Tampa Bay, signed that 1-year deal. He's had 38 tackles, 28 solo. He has a couple more sacks than TJ at 14.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, 26 quarterback hits, 6 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and 2 pass defense. And then you're looking at another pass rusher that deserves some consideration. That's the former Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald. He's had 38 tackles, 25 solo. He only has 9.5 sacks, but 9.5 sacks from an interior defensive lineman is great in the season. 17 tackles for loss, 18 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 1 pass defense, and he's also been the person that contributed a safety. Then you have 2 secondary members that should be in the top 5 in voting. First of all is the shutdown and elite corner, the man corner, Stephon Gilmore, the best one in the NFL. 37 tackles, 30 of them solo, 4 picks, 1 that's been returned for a touchdown, 13 pass defense, and just his coverage stats are absolutely ridiculous. He's had 12 games, he's been targeted 56 times, he's only allowed 21 receptions for a completion percentage of only 38%, which is unreal for a man cover corner. And it's allowed 246 yards receiving, no touchdowns, and a passer rating of 21.88. That that'll put you in top 3 of voting because that is an absolute elite shutdown corner. And finally, the only other person for stats wise I'm going to throw out there in the top 5 is our boy Minkah Fitzpatrick, because he should definitely be in the conversation as the game changer he has been for this defense. He has 56 tackles, 35 of the solo variety, 5 picks, 1 return for a touchdown, 9 pass defense, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 1 that has been returned for a touchdown, and also a quarterback hit. So those are your top 5, and just some others to note. Chandler Jones has been having an excellent season. Jamie Collins, a resurgent season for the New England Patriots, coming back there. Nick Bosa, the ultra rookie out in San Fran. Khalil Mack has had a very steady and good year, including, I believe, 5 forced fumbles, and not really being talked a lot about in Chicago, being their kind of somewhat down season because of Trubisky falling back to earth. And Jamal Adams, who's been just absolutely ridiculous even after all the trade rumors. So you see the company that TJ Watt's in there for. Not only was he rewarded with the player a month in November, but he's an elite company in the conversation for that defensive player of the year, and he is right up there and should be one of the top 3 vote getters, if not the winner this year. So that's going to transition us now into our sermon session here. And we've been going through kind of some of the free agency and looking ahead to next year, but as we get into turning the calendar in December of the 2019 year and season, it kind of gives us a second to pause and reflect and look back, as this is the last month, Steeler Nation, of this decade. I don't know what they're calling it, but we're going to kind of, in the next few videos, take a look back at the previous decade, some of the players that we've had, some of the draft picks that we've had, and maybe some of the biggest moments that we got to experience the last 10 years. And what a 10 years it's been. We've won a lot of games. We made it to a Super Bowl right away in 2010. Unfortunately, we lost to Green Bay. But we're going to look this week, especially and more pointedly, at offensive players of the past decade. It's been a kind of a neat experience for me to look back at all these players that I've grown up with and really have taken to heart and watched their journey and really invested a lot into them as a fan. So we're going to go through it. There might be a couple throw off positions that you're like, why would you pick somebody like that? But it's been something fun that I wanted to do. And we're going to look at it going forward. So our starting quarterback in the lineup, and this is a pretty easy one, it's a layup, is Mr. Ben Roethlisberger, the franchise quarterback. Even though he's experienced the season-ending injury this year, this past decade has been great for a Steeler fan with a quarterback like him under center. His escapability and everything I care. I'm going to read through some stats for each one of these guys, just to kind of give you, their arguing points. And I might even list off a few honorable mentions for each one of these here that we took into consideration. So he was a part of 131 games in the past decade. He started 130. He was regular season record was 84 victories, 45 losses, and 1 tie. He has a 64.8 completion percentage with over 3,000 completions, over 37,000 passing yards. He had 95.1 QB rating. He had 236 touchdowns to 110 interceptions. He had 11 playoff appearances this past decade with a 5-6 playoff record. He did lose the 1 Super Bowl there in Super Bowl XLV to the Green Bay Packers in 2010. And he was a 5-time Pro Bowler, and there's just no other person in the conversation. Big Ben is one of the best quarterbacks in the league when healthy. He's one of the funnest to watch, as his backyard mentality will still come out from time to time and make plays that just absolutely awe you. His arms up there with some of the best and throwing downfield, and his ability to shake off hits it's just always been fun for me to watch, because it reminds me of being back in the schoolyard, slinging the ball around and taking on 3 or 4 defenders and still shaking them off and throwing the ball to whoever's open. So that's our starting quarterback, is Ben Roethlisberger. Backup quarterback, I'm going to throw one out there just because Ben always seemed to get nicked here and there. So we've had a lot of experience with backup quarterbacks, but I don't have any numbers for him. It's just been a personal feel and been always one of the best mentors and great guys in the Pittsburgh franchise, Steeler franchise history. That's Mr. Charlie Batch. He's a great, ambassador for the Steelers name in the city of Pittsburgh, and he's our backup quarterback of the decade. He had a lot to choose from here in our honorable mentions. You had the Landry Jones, the Byron Leftwich, Bruce Gradkowski was here for a while. Even our man Duck Hodges, as of right now, even had a cup of coffee from Michael Vick for a year or so, and Dennis Dixon was in that mix for a while as an athletic young guy, and even Mason Rudolph, and some of the memories that we'll have of him, even good or bad. So there was a lot to pick from there, but Charlie Batch is our backup quarterback of the decade. So that's going to make us roll right into our skills positions now. And our running back, we had some of them here we had to choose from it, but it wasn't as hard as what you think, because we're all thinking back to the guy that sat out one year, even though he was a Steeler, and that's Mr. Le'Veon Bell. He was the elite of elite, all-pro 2 times while he was here in Pittsburgh, 3-time Pro Bowler. He had 62 games with us. They were all starred, 62 that he was in. He rushed for over 5,000 yards at 5,336 rushing yards, 35 rushing TDs while he was with us. And he also contributed as an outstanding receiver, 312 receptions, 2,660 reception yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. He was an absolute mismatch, whether it was a runner or as a pass catcher. His patience to be able to let blocks develop and just run was you didn't see it very often. It was groundbreaking. The offensive line had to adjust to it, but some of the miracles and the magic that he performed while he was here on the field was just immaculate. I wish the ending would have been a little better. I wish we would have been able to see Le'Veon Bell longer in a Steelers uniform, but it wasn't to be, and just I wish him the best over in New York, and hopefully he puts up big numbers for them like he did for us. But he was our running back of the decade for Pittsburgh. Our honorable mentions here was Rashard Mendenhall. He had an up and down career with Pittsburgh, but he had a one really good season with, I believe, 10 to 13 touchdowns, and some other mediocre seasons that he contributed in kind of a committee sort of way. But you had the veteran D'Angelo Williams, who was a great ambassador for the Steelers' name as well off the field. He was a real workhorse when he was with us, whenever Le'Veon Bell was nicked here and there and was suspended. So D'Angelo Williams, great personality. He made the honorable mention list. Isaac Red Zone Redman as well was a contributor and a folklore hero through training camp. James Conner as well, with his story beating cancer in the 3rd round pick and making a name of himself as a Pro Bowler last year, was a honorable mention, as well as a little known contributor named Meweldy Moore, who was an outstanding back early in the 2010s. So those are our honorable mentions, but Le'Veon Bell is our choice for all-decade player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we move on to the forgotten man in the backfield, and that's the fullback position, because we still utilize that from time to time here in Pittsburgh. Our choice was for Roosevelt Nix. He's been an outstanding special teams player. He's converted defensive lineman. Loved him whenever he was at Kent State scouting him. But as a fullback, he is a hammer when he gets an opportunity. Underrated receiver. He's made the Pro Bowls, not really so much as a fullback as a special teams contributor, but he is an outstanding player, outstanding work ethic, and a great guy in that locker room. So we had Roosevelt Nix. Our honorable mention there was the tight end fullback David Johnson, who early on in his career helped Roosevelt Nix and rear him into the player he is. So now we're going to move on to the wide receivers, and this was an interesting debate. We all know who number 1 is. He's pretty easy to identify here as a Pittsburgh Steeler, not only there, but as the outstanding receiver he was on the field. We all know the antics that's happened off the field. A lot of questionable decisions by 84 AB, and God bless him. I hope he is doing well. I hope he's getting the help he needs. I hope he straightens himself out, because I don't want to see this being the ending of AB. And I know he issued an apology today via Twitter or Instagram, wherever it was, apologizing to all franchises. And I hope that he would get himself straightened out and we can see him back on a football field. I don't think we'll ever see it in Pittsburgh again, but I guess you never say never. But when he's been on the field, he's been outstanding. Just absolutely rare talent. He worked himself there. He did have the talent, but his work ethic is off the charts. And his stats are absolutely insane, and were Hall of Fame pointed if he would just continually play and got himself right. He played in 130 games while with Pittsburgh. He had 103 starts, 837 receptions, 11,207 receiving yards, 74 receiving touchdowns, a 7-time Pro Bowler, and a 4-time first team All-Pro. I could not pull him out of the first overall position with the wide receivers. No matter how it ended here in Pittsburgh, he still put up elite stats and was Big Ben's favorite target while he was here. So our second wide receiver choice, and this might be a head turner here that it's not a certain young receiver that's still playing for them right now, but it is Mr. Mike Wallace. When in the early 2010s with Big Ben, that chemistry that they had in Ben taking a 5-step drop and throwing it as absolutely as far as possible was poetry in motion. Seeing Mike Wallace's 4.2, I think it was 4.28 speed, just road runnering down the field and coming underneath the ball was amazing to see. I loved it every time it happened. You knew he wasn't going to get paid here because, as Mike Tomlin called him, he was a one-trick pony, and he did wind up showing that throughout his contract with Miami. But while he was here, the highs were high, and we loved seeing that action. And the stats for him to back that up is he had 47 games with us, 44 games started. He had just under 200 receptions at 196. He had 3,286 reception yards and a whopping 26 receiving touchdowns while with us, and he did make it to the Pro Bowl once in 2011. So Mike Wallace, you are recognized here as one of the all-decade performers for Pittsburgh. And then finally is the young gun, and that's Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster. The man's, the aura around him, the fun-loving life, and not only that, the off-field presence, but his work on the field speaks for itself in its first few years. He contributed 40 games with 30 games started. He has 207 receptions in his young career, 2,867 receiving yards, 17 receiving touchdowns already, and he already made the Pro Bowl in 2018. So this guy, the arrows are pointing way up. I know he had a difficult season this year with Ben being injured and the uncertainty at quarterback. And then you have now him working off an injury, whether it's the foot, now he has a knee injury. He'll make himself right. He's a hard worker, and that chemistry will be back, and I'm sure he'll be up there in the all-time ranks of a lot of records in the receiving history of Pittsburgh. So just to recap, we have AB, Mike Wallace, and Juju Smith-Schuster for our top 3 receiver selections. Then I'll have to throw out a couple honorable mentions here because we had been quite the selection of receivers to pick from in the last decade. We had a Martavis Bryant who has been troubled, but while he was on the field is, just like I said with Mike Wallace, awe-inspiring some of the plays that he made. Emmanuel Sanders, the playmaker, has played for the Broncos and now the 49ers and just been a playmaker wherever he's been. Part of that old Young Money crew that was here with AB and him and Mike Wallace as Hines Ward was trying to teach him the ropes. And just to mention, Hines Ward was still in the tail end of his career here early in the 2010s. He didn't have the stats as he did in the 2000s, but in the 2010s, he did put up a few numbers, and he was an honorable mention here, as well as Eli Rogers had some nice catches and some nice yardage and gains here and some clutch moments. And Jericho Cotchery as well had a couple seasons for us that were noteworthy. So those were our honorable mentions for receivers. Now we're going to roll into the tight ends, and there's only one person to select, and that's the class of tight end in Steelers history, Mr. Heath Miller. You can still hear it every time a tight end catches it in Pittsburgh and Heinz Field. You hear the Heath. And, man, he just was a quiet guy, did his job. And I think sometimes that was to his detriment because he got forgot about a lot in the league. But he played 90 games for us. He started all 90 of them. He had 348 career receptions in the 2010 decade. 3,848 receiving yards, 18 receiving touchdowns, and he only made the one solitary Pro Bowl in 2012. As I said, there was a lot of tight end talent throughout the years in the AFC, and it was hard to get him to the Pro Bowl. But that guy, he is one of the best players of all time in Pittsburgh, and he was an easy choice for a tight end position here. Honorable mentions is the Vanimal, Vance McDonald. He's had some really noteworthy plays throughout the time he's been here since acquired from San Francisco. The outlaw, Jesse James, before he left via free agency, was a quality tight end. And also Matt Spaeth, the blocking tight end. Didn't have a lot of receptions, but he was a key contributor in a lot of our rushing game. Now we're going to move on to our offensive line, and that's the final portion of our all-decade team here. And first of all, a lot of these were stalwart players. They played a long time for us. We don't switch a lot of the guard in front of Big Ben after the adjustment and knowing that we needed to protect him, to preserve him long term. And some of these guys played for numerous years for us, and it was kind of hard to distinguish maybe a different guy, give him a chance to get in there because of some of these guys' experience. But at left tackle, we have the Army Ranger and the vet that we all respect, Alejandro Villanueva, a self-made man that worked his way up from a practice squad defensive end in Philadelphia that we signed through the Mike Munchak experience, helped form him and mold him into a left tackle and that athleticism. He's started 76 game to him to this point of this recording, or excuse me, he had 76 games experience to this point of this recording. He was 70 games started, and he's a two-time Pro Bowler. He's an outstanding player. He's a tall player. Sometimes he gets taken advantage of in that way, but that guy has those mobility as a pass blocker is one of the best in the league, and just simply a great player. Great work ethic, great story. Love him out left tackle. He's our selection as a hero there for our all-decade team. Out at left guard is the big Ragu, Ramon Foster. He has 142 games experience with us with 137 games started. Another self-made man, an undrafted free agent. He started games in 2010 immediately. Even in our Super Bowl season there, as we lost to Green Bay, he was contributing as a starter and played throughout the whole decade with us, has been a stalwart there, has been the left-hand man of Marquise Pouncey in setting the protections and just been a veteran presence in that locker room. So he's our left guard selection. At center, and the pivot man and the captain of the Pittsburgh Steelers is Marquise Pouncey. There's a reason why Ben said he's staying as long as Marquise does, and Marquise said he's staying as long as Ben does. Because these guys, Marquise Pouncey is an alpha male in that locker room. He's been that way since he's been selected by us in the first round. I believe it was 18th overall. He has 118 games experience with us, 118 games started. He would have had more if not for a couple injuries that have taken him out. He's a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro. Hands down, best blocker, and the ability to see him pull block and counter trap from the center position is just rare. I love seeing that athleticism. Marquise Pouncey is our center selection. Right guard as well will probably be up for a Hall of Fame vote if he continues on his trajectory as of right now. One of the best counter trap pullers I've ever seen is Mr. David DeCastro. He had the one season where he dealt with injury, but he's had 108 games experience with us, 107 games started. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro. Outstanding offensive lineman, great technician, good athleticism and ability to form and fit at the second level, or just elite for the NFL level. Is one of the best guards in all the league. He's our right guard selection, his easy selection there. At right tackle, we have a couple new guys we took in consideration that filled in, but this was also an easy selection. He was a former second-round pick, Marcus Gilbert from Florida. He had 88 games with us and 87 games started, never made a Pro Bowl, but high-quality right tackle for a number of years until the injury bug caught up with him, and he hasn't been able to shake it even after we traded him to the Arizona Cardinals. Has also been out for the year this season, but when he was on the field, he was an above-average right tackle, a really good pass protector, good run blocker, and just a high-quality offensive lineman. So that offensive line right there, I think a lot of teams would pay good money just to have a chance at a lot of them guys. And we've been spoiled as Steeler Nation the past decade for the people that we've had. And our last selection here, and it's somebody that I just love selecting an offensive lineman. I think it's maybe in the spirit we should call it the Zach Banner position, because they're heralded as that sixth man. And that's we took a lot of consideration in here, because you got to have the versatility, whether it's a guard center or maybe guard tackle. And that's B.J. Finney. I'm selecting him here for our reserve offensive lineman position. And the little known fact about him, he's only started 12 games for the Steelers. He's played in a lot of them. But the Steelers are 11-1 when he starts a game, whether that's at guard or at center. And there's a reason for that. He's a high-quality offensive lineman, good technician, good power, and also good agility as a counter-trap puller, and just an amazing offensive lineman, and an amazing stat there. And our offensive line honorable mentions, just to throw out after him that we took in consideration even for the reserve, and that's Max Starks, the stalwart there for a lot of years, even in the 2000s. Doug Legursky, cult hero there, Bronco Legursky, even at the fullback position. Willie Colon at the beginning of the 2010s. He had some time with us before he went to the Jets. Chris Hubbard, before he left, he had the 1 year of starting as Gilbert was hurt. Played high-quality football for us before he left. Matt Filer, who's done a really good job for us the last 2 seasons, and also, as I said, the cult hero Zach Banner and what he's done. So those are our honorable mentions. They didn't make our list, but BJ Finney is our pick for reserve offensive lineman. So that's our team. Just to recap it for you, our starting quarterback is Mr. Ben Roethlisberger. Our backup quarterback is Charlie Batch. Our running back selection is Le'Veon Bell. Our fullback is Roosevelt Nix. Our 3 wide receiver selections are Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, and also Juju Smith-Schuster. Our tight end is Heath Miller. And then our offensive line, left tackle Alejandro Villanueva, left guard Ramon Foster, center Marquise Pouncey, right guard David DeCastro, right tackle Marcus Gilbert, and then our reserve offensive lineman B.J. Finney. So that completes our series for the offensive portion of the all-decade team of the Steelers in the 2010s. And next week, guys, we're going to be going through the defensive players of the past decade, and also going to throw in a couple special teams contributors as well. So make sure you bookmark that and come back for it next week to take a look at those players, because that was a really fun time for me to look at all them stats and remember all the good memories that they partaken in. Now, guys, we're going to transition, as always, guys and gals, I should say, in Steeler Nation, into our game preview for this week, week 14, as we are at right now, coming right down the stretch, hopefully to that playoff run as we were talking about earlier. The Steelers head on out to the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, to match up with the 3-8-1 Arizona Cardinals, who are stuck in that 5-game losing streak, and they're trying to bounce back from a really bad-looking loss to the Los Angeles Rams, where they lost 34-7. Just to start off here, we're looking at our injury report. Steelers only had 2 players listed, and they're both out, and it was kind of expected they're going to be out. Juju Smith-Schuster with his knee injury. I believe it was Jim Wexel or Dahan Gafachovic that was saying that he might have had a really bulky knee. He's been seen with a brace, and hopefully it's nothing too severe. Hopefully it's no ligament damage of some sort, but hopefully they let him out as these young guys are stepping out and get a chance to get right and get healed. As we come down the stretch here, we'll need him if we're getting into the playoffs. So Juju's out this week again. Also, James Conner is also out this week with his shoulder injury that he re-aggravated a few weeks ago. He did get in a limited practice all week, but most of all, I guess it was with the scout team, so he wasn't seeing a lot of looks. He hasn't been hit on it yet, and I'm kind of really apprehensive to see where that makes him for the rest of the year. Hopefully they're letting him work through it, but if it gets to a point where it's not improving, they shut him down and give him a chance to heal up either all off season naturally, or if he needs some sort of cleanup procedure or surgery, that they would partake that route, because we could use him as a depth option and also to help Snell out in that workload. For the Arizona Cardinals, they had a couple people listed here on their injury report. 2 late adds that were additions on Friday with limited practices both, and they're both cornerbacks. First was Byron Murphy with a calf injury, and also Kevin Peterson with a shoulder injury. At least one of them guys are going to have to be able to play for them, because they only have 4 cornerbacks listed on their roster as of this moment. If one can't go, it's most likely going to be Chris Jones stepping up to see more significant playing time. But you're really going to have to keep a watch here on Saturday, that if they sign a cornerback, that's probably tipping the hand saying that either Murphy or Peterson is not going to be able to participate on Sunday. They also listed a reserve offensive lineman, Max Garcia, with a toe injury. He's questionable, but he had a full practice on Friday. Their starting center, A.Q. Shipley, former Steelers pick, 7th-round pick, was down with an illness. Had a limited practice on Friday. Pretty much the stomach bug's been working its way around in Arizona. It also made right guard J.R. Sweezy miss a practice this week with it, so you really got to watch that. Maybe they might have another guy might contract it before game time, so keep an eye on the waiver wire and the injury reports as it's coming out. They also had their young safety, Jalen Thompson, who was a supplemental pick from Washington State, had a concussion. He got a full practice in on Friday. He'll most likely have to be cleared before ready to play, but he did get that full session in on Friday, and he is also questionable. A.Q. Shipley was questionable, and Max Garcia is questionable. All 5 players are listed as questionable, but you got to really keep an eye out to see if they sign a cornerback on Saturday. If so, most likely one of them corners ain't playing, and make sure you watch out for the illness bug that's going around. Now, we're going to go on for going for 3 portion of the preview, and that's our 3 stories we're going to take a look at quickly. Can Duck Hodges outshined the number 1 pick from this past year's draft, Mr. Kyler Murray, who I was, pumping that bar up even higher over the draft process because I loved him and I can't wait to see him against the Steelers. But that's not saying I want him to do well against our defense. He was the number 1 overall pick in this past April. He's been great or good for the most part of this whole season. He's already set a franchise rookie record for 2,866 passing yards, despite a tough game against those Rams, as we just said. He already has 14 touchdowns passing and 6 interceptions, and he also chipped in another 4 rushing touchdowns. So, Duck will have to keep that momentum rolling. He'll have to keep them good vibes going. He'll have to keep making smart decisions with the football, as Mike Tomlin says. Don't kill him in that defense. And be aggressive whenever you get that shot downfield, because we've seen what you can do with it. You can make some magic happen. Duck, let's see it. Let's go duck hunting. Our second story is the defense needs to keep eating, as they have been all year. Our defense is among the best in the NFL, Steeler Nation, especially at sacking the quarterback and getting takeaways this year. But the defense needs to show it can rush the passer on the road. As I referenced earlier, on the road, they're only averaging 1.6 sacks. As weird as that is compared to his home, they were averaging 5 sacks a game. So we really need to bump that number up. They need to be mindful also of keeping contain on Murray, as he is an outstanding athlete and can break contain and run down the field and contribute there, even though he might have a somewhat under-the-table nagging hamstring injury. He's not listed on the injury report, but last week he was. So they'll need to make sure that they can contain him while still being aggressive and trying to get him down. Now, last story, Steeler Nation, our pass catchers need to keep making plays for this young quarterback as he develops, some continuity with him and some chemistry. As I spoke upon earlier, James Washington has really been blowing up the last 2 weeks. Vance McDonald was clutch last week with a few catches, even coming up with a huge first down when we needed him. Tevin Jones has been clutch and made a lot of tough-minded catches and also really contributed in the run blocking department. Deon Cain has flashed when he's been loud on the field and going downfield. So, and Ducks really tried to get him the ball. But what I really want to highlight here is you, Mr. Deontay Johnson. I love you as a player, and I know you had a rough go of it this past Sunday. You had a rookie day, as they'd like to say. You had a false start penalty, a 15-yard personal foul penalty. You had a drop. You ran out of bounds late in the game. Or the most egregious was letting up on a route because you ran it in the wrong route and it led to a Duck Hodges interception. So I'm sure you want to just, burn that tape, forget all about it. It is your rookie year. You'll have that. You'll have those faux pas. And I know you'll turn that page quickly, but we know the better days are ahead, and your upside is huge because your ability to separate and get open is amazing for a rookie. But we need you this week. I know you're with a little bit of the illness bug yourself. I hope you can get past it, and we need a big game from you opposite James Washington going forward here. So those pass catchers really need to step up. So that now leads us into our 3 matchups of the week. And the first one is we're going to do the bookends of the Arizona Cardinals. I know we're just do 3 matchups, but we're going to name this one all as one. They switch sides, so it's hard to nail down one. Chandler Jones, who's having an elite season as a pass rusher, as always it seems like, and also our kryptonite Terrell Suggs plays for the Arizona Cardinals, and that's going to put our tackles on notice. Mr. Matt Filer and Alejandro Villanueva, you need to bring your game time game on and put that chin strap up and get ready for a slugfest, because it's going to be 4 quarters. We need you to match up with these guys all 4 quarters and meet that match, put that bar up high. We're going to need you to really step up and keep our young quarterback clean. Now, we're going to move on to an interesting matchup. I know when you hear the Arizona Cardinals, you always think, David Johnson, one of the best running backs in all the league. That might be, but since they've traded and inquired for Kenyon Drake, they've really kind of made him a secondary thought in the backfield. And that's Kenyon Drake has been contributing as a really good runner in this system for Cliff Kingsbury, and also contributing as a pass catcher. And he's going to be matched up on Devin Bush a lot, and that's going to be an interesting matchup, whether he's running or pass catching, and also maybe as a pass protector as well, because Devin Bush can bring the heat as a blitzer. So that's a key matchup, Drake versus Devin Bush. And final matchup to keep an eye on, and this one's been well documented throughout the week by everybody, but I'm just going to highlight one player, and that's Budda Baker versus our tight end, Vance McDonald. The Steelers' opponent, Arizona Cardinals, are the NFL's worst team at defending tight ends. In 12 games this season, the opposing tight ends have caught 79 passes for 978 yards and 13 touchdowns. I know, Vance, you've had an up and down year. You've been contributing in the blocking game. I'll even throw in a Nick Vannett here. This is the game we need to get right in the tight end department, and we need you to have a big game, maybe 80 yards receiving, a touchdown, break a couple tackles, and make a highlight play. So Vance McDonald, Boone Baker is our final matchup to keep an eye on. So Steeler Nation, we have our 3 keys to a Steeler victory. Our offensive line, first of all, must keep Duck clean. As I said, the kryptonite, Terrell Suggs is playing on that side. Chandler Jones has been a great pass rusher this year. So we're going to have to really watch for twists and stunts and the ability to ride those tackles back into the backfield and push Duck. So we really need to keep them clean. That's not only a Villanueva-Filer matchup, but we need all 5 to be back in sync as Pouncey's reinserted at the center position, making all the right calls. Our second key to victory is don't let Kyler Murray break contain and sack him when you get the chance. Kyler Murray leads the league in sacks this year, given up with 41, and we need to continually stuff that stat sheet and pump that number up. We need to make sure we contain him and get him to the ground when we get a chance, because he will fall to the ground just to conserve his body. And our final point is get that run game continually rolling. Keep Benny Snell football and the spinner spinning, and let's get some downhill, hard-nosed running attack as we hopefully close out another victory here on this push to the playoffs. So that's going to lead us up to our prediction at this point, Steeler Nation. I'm going to go with our Pittsburgh Steelers in a close matchup as we are going across country, as I said, to Glendale, Arizona. Pittsburgh Steelers 23, the Arizona Cardinals 20. That was a mouthful, guys, and I'm excited for this matchup. As I said, I was a huge Murray fan, but I'm also a huge fan of Duck Hodges in this defense, and it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be fun to watch, and I hope you're with your family and friends coming into the Christmas and holiday season, and hopefully you're all together enjoying it here. But we're going to transition to our final session, as always, here at the Steel City Sermon. We're going to go to our trivia question. Last week's trivia question was, who was the first coach in Pittsburgh Steelers history? As I said, it weren't the Steelers to begin with. They were the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that's what I was looking for, and that was Mr. Forrest Dowds. He had a record of 3 wins, 6 losses, and 2 ties, and he was fired in the offseason. So what a first coach for the Steelers history. This week's trivia question was, who has the single-season rushing yardage record in Steelers history, and how much did they rush for? So let me repeat that. Who has the single-season rushing yardage record in Steelers history, and how much did they rush for? And that is our trivia question for this week. As always, Steeler Nation, make sure you give us a like and a follow, and check out everything at blitzlytics.com. We have outstanding writers, scouts, podcasters, all kinds of stuff. We got you covered. If you're looking for Christmas gifts, make sure you check out my man Rob's Graphics. He has his own t-shirt line there with Blitzlytics stuff and a lot of his own artwork. Make sure you check out all of his stuff at Blitzlytics for everything in football needs you have, whether it's college football, scouting, fantasy football, anything you can think of, blitzlytics.com. Our show's Twitter. If you want to reach out, have questions for us, answer the trivia question. We're going to try to get some shirts made up here. Maybe I can start doing some giveaways. That's at Steel City Sermon. If you want to reach out to me personally on Twitter, I'll respond back to you. It's at Preacher Boy Roy. And as always, guys, we know how I like to end my anything I'm on, I should say, is stay humble and be a blessing.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing it for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, 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 black and yellow.